What if I told you, whether it's a physical disc or a digital purchase, it doesn't matter. If the servers go down, your disc won't work either. Let's get into it. Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week. Spider-Man 2 just got a new free update, and after trying it myself, I have to say it looks pretty impressive. Update 1.005.000 is now available on both PS5 and PC, and it adds 2 brand new suits for Peter Parker, enhanced PSSR support on PS5 Pro, and a new power-saving mode. The first suit is the Fresh Start suit, inspired by Spider-Man Brand New Day. The second comes from Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, and it has a much more colorful, stylized look. Both suits are pretty awesome, and I like that they feel completely different from each other. One looks more grounded and cinematic, while the other feels like Spider-Man jumped straight out of a fighting game. And yes, they are completely free. At a time when some publishers will charge money for the smallest cosmetic change, it is nice to see Insomniac simply give players something fun and new. The biggest surprise for me, though, was the image quality. I honestly did not think Spider-Man 2 could look much better than it already did, because the game was already one of the best-looking titles on PS5. But Insomniac somehow managed to improve it again with the help of PSSR2 technology. Everything looks a little sharper, cleaner, and more refined, especially when you are swinging quickly through the city. It is not the kind of upgrade that completely changes the game, but it is noticeable. You may not immediately stop and say, "This looks completely different," but after playing for a while, the whole image feels more polished. It is like cleaning a window you already thought was clean, then suddenly realizing how much clearer the view can be. And that is what impressed me the most. Insomniac was not fixing an ugly game. They were improving something that already looked fantastic, and they still managed to make a visible difference. The timing of the update is also pretty cool. Insomniac's Spider-Man games helped inspire some of the action in Spider-Man Brand New Day, and now the movie is giving something back through the new suit. The game inspired the film, and the film is now feeding back into the game. Overall, this is exactly the kind of update I like seeing for a single-player game. For years, potentiometers were just the standard for analog sticks. Nobody really questioned it. They got the job done until they didn't. Then, stick drift started becoming a much bigger problem. You know that annoying moment when your character starts walking on their own, even though your thumbs aren't touching the controller? It's kind of like a shopping cart with a busted wheel. No matter how hard you try to steer it straight, it keeps pulling to one side. That's exactly why non-contact technologies like Hall effect and tunneling magnetoresistance, or TMR, have become so popular. Since these sticks don't rely on physical parts rubbing against each other, they don't wear out nearly as fast. The catch? They arrived halfway through this console generation, which means they've mostly been limited to third-party controllers. Now, though, Sony might finally be looking at making the jump. A recently discovered Sony patent hints that the company is exploring magnetic analog sticks for future PlayStation controllers. The drawings look almost identical to the current DualSense, but the interesting part isn't the design, it's what's inside. The patent specifically mentions using magnetic resistance sensors, including tunneling magnetoresistance technology. It also says the sticks would work in a non-contact way, which is exactly what you'd expect from magnetic sensors. In simple terms, instead of physical components constantly scraping against each other, the controller reads movement magnetically. Think of it like automatic doors at a grocery store. They know you're there without anything actually touching. If Sony goes this route, it could be one of the biggest upgrades the PlayStation controller has seen in years. Sure, magnetic sticks can use a little more battery than traditional potentiometers, but that's a pretty small trade-off if it means saying goodbye to stick drift. Right now, though, your only option for TMR sticks on PS5 is buying a third-party controller like the Razer Raiju V3 Pro. Sounds great, right? Well, there's a catch. Even though it's officially licensed, you lose some of the features that make the DualSense feel special. There's no haptic feedback, and you also miss out on adaptive triggers. So yes, your analog sticks will probably last much longer, but you're giving up a lot of the immersion that games like Astrobot or Spider-Man are built around. As always with patents, none of this guarantees we'll actually see a PlayStation controller with TMR sticks. Companies file patents all the time that never become real products. Still, it's an encouraging sign. The patent images even resemble the current DualSense, which makes it easy to imagine Sony introducing updated controllers sometime before the next console generation ends. And honestly, there's another possibility that might be even better. Imagine if Sony updated the swappable stick modules on the DualSense Edge with TMR technology instead of the current potentiometers. You'd keep all of the premium DualSense features while finally getting analog sticks that are built to last. If Sony can pull that off, it might just create the ultimate PlayStation controller. It looks like the gaming industry's push toward more expensive editions is actually working, and the numbers are pretty hard to ignore. PlayStation Store pre-order data suggests that more players are choosing premium editions over the cheaper standard versions. In other words, when gamers are given a regular option and a more expensive option packed with bonuses, a surprising number of them are reaching for the pricier one. Grand Theft Auto 6 is the clearest example. Its $100 Ultimate Edition reportedly became the most pre-ordered version across all 9 tracked regions, including the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Spain, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Japan, and Hong Kong. That is a pretty big signal. Gamers are not just tolerating a $100 price tag. In many cases, they are actively choosing it over the cheaper version. It is a little like going to the cinema and being offered a regular ticket or a premium seat with extra legroom, early access, and free snacks. You may not need the upgrade, but when the extras feel valuable enough, spending another $20 suddenly does not seem so unreasonable. And GTA 6 is not the only game showing this pattern. Halo Campaign Evolved's Premium Edition is also ranking ahead of the standard version. Of course, Halo is a special case. This would be the franchise's first major appearance on PlayStation, so there is plenty of built-up curiosity and excitement. But the Premium Edition also includes 5 days of early access. 5 days might not sound huge at first, but think about it. That is basically an entire working week. For a highly anticipated game, that can feel like everyone else has already entered the party while you are still standing outside waiting for the door to open. For some players, paying an extra $20 to avoid that feeling is apparently an easy decision. The same thing is happening with Wolverine. Its digital deluxe edition is reportedly outselling the cheaper version in several markets. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 is showing a similar trend with its Vault edition, although a 10% discount is probably helping there. A premium version feels a lot more tempting when the store is also telling you that you are getting a deal. Then there are the sports games. In the States, EA reportedly has 2 separate $100 deluxe editions inside the top 10 most pre-ordered games: Madden NFL 27 Deluxe Edition and NHL 27 Deluxe Edition. So what does all this mean? It suggests that the gaming industry may have discovered a new price tolerance level. For years, $60 was considered the standard price for a major game. Then $70 became the new normal. Now, with deluxe editions, early access, cosmetics, virtual currency, bonus missions, and other extras, publishers are testing whether $90 or even $100 can start feeling normal too. And judging by these pre-order charts, that strategy may be working. But there is an important detail here. These rankings can change. Pre-order charts are always moving around as release dates get closer, discounts appear, and new games are announced. Still, the overall positions have reportedly remained fairly consistent. Players may genuinely be getting more comfortable with expensive editions, especially when the bonuses feel useful, exclusive, or time-sensitive. Digital sales are probably a major reason for this shift. Most players now buy and access games digitally rather than using a physical disc. And once everything is presented on the same store page, upgrading becomes incredibly easy. You see the standard edition for $70, then the deluxe version sitting right beside it for $90 or $100. The store highlights all the extra content, flashes an early access bonus in front of you, and suddenly the expensive edition starts looking like the complete version. It is similar to ordering food through an app. You plan to buy the basic meal, but then it asks whether you want to make it a large for just a few dollars more. Add a drink, add a side, add a dessert, and before you know it, your simple order costs twice as much. Digital storefronts make game upgrades feel just as effortless. The original report also connects this trend to Sony's possible long-term move away from physical game discs. It claims Sony may begin phasing out disc production for new PlayStation games starting in January 2028, potentially pushing the PlayStation 6 generation even further toward digital-only access. Whether that exact future happens or not, the broader direction is clear. Gaming is becoming more digital, premium editions are becoming more aggressive, and players are increasingly showing that they are willing to pay extra when the bonuses feel valuable enough. The real question is, are gamers becoming more comfortable with higher prices? Or are publishers simply getting much better at making the cheaper edition feel incomplete? It may be a little bit of both. You paid for the console. You paid for the game. You might even be holding the physical disc right in your hand. Yet, your system refuses to launch it until a corporate server hundreds of miles away grants you permission. Welcome to the modern illusion of ownership. Whether your library is physical or digital, the bottom line is this. If you bought a game, you should be able to play it. It shouldn't depend on an online handshake, the availability of a company's servers, or a network staying online. But during the recent major Xbox outages surrounding the launch of Halo Campaign evolved, that fundamental right disappeared. Players, even those with physical discs, found themselves completely locked out of their purchases. Think about how ridiculous that sounds. Modern Xbox systems rely on live authentication to verify licenses, meaning when their services go dark, your console can't complete the check. The defense from the industry is usually that an offline mode exists. But why should the average owner need to configure their system as a home console, ensure the game was launched online previously, and refresh licenses before a crash even happens? The entire appeal of a console is supposed to be plug-and-play simplicity. It shouldn't feel like packing an emergency survival kit just in case Microsoft's servers stop answering. Saying you should have configured your console differently before an unannounced outage is like a bank locking you out of your account and telling you that you should have withdrawn cash yesterday. Xbox Live has reportedly been down for around 16 hours, and for a lot of players, that meant they couldn't launch their games. Not just digital games either. Some people were saying even their physical discs wouldn't work, and that's where this stops being a simple server problem and starts becoming a much bigger conversation. The outage appears to have started around 9 p.m. Pacific time on Sunday, July 26th, with players quickly heading to Reddit to figure out what was going on. They were met with an error message telling them to try again later, check the Xbox service status, and wait a few minutes, which would be reasonable advice if the service page actually showed there was a problem. For the first few hours, it apparently didn't, so players were being told to check a status page that was basically standing there with its hands in its pockets saying, "Everything looks fine." Eventually, Xbox updated the page and confirmed major outages across several services. Microsoft said it had identified the problem, but there was no estimated time for a fix. Then the message changed to say it was taking longer than expected. And when you're already 16 or 17 hours into an outage, longer than expected starts to feel like a bit of an understatement. Xbox support also posted on X, saying engineers were actively working on the issue and thanking everyone for their patience. But there wasn't much actual information beyond that. And this wasn't even an isolated incident. Xbox Live reportedly had another outage the previous week, and around the same time, some players were having trouble accessing Halo Campaign Evolve's early access period. Imagine paying extra to play a game early, clearing your schedule, getting everything ready, and then being locked out because the servers are down. You've got the pizza in the oven, the lights dimmed, maybe you even took a day off work, and instead of playing the game, you're staring at an error message. That's not just annoying. You paid specifically for that time. And this leads to the biggest question players were asking. Why does an online outage stop someone from playing a game locally, especially when they own the disc? Xbox does have an offline mode, but it's not exactly simple. You may need to be online when setting it up, the console may need to be marked as your home Xbox, and some games need to be launched online first so the system can verify that you own them. That verification may also need to happen again later. And let's be honest, most console players are never thinking about any of this when everything is working. Why would they? The whole appeal of a console is supposed to be that you turn it on, choose a game, and play. It's like owning a toaster and suddenly finding out you need to log into your Bread account before breakfast. Technically, there may be a workaround, but why should the customer have to become an expert in digital rights management just to use something they already bought? To be fair, the outage didn't affect every player or every game in exactly the same way. Some people could launch certain games but not others. Some could play through Xbox Cloud Gaming. Others said games they owned worked occasionally, while Game Pass titles were completely unavailable. But there were still plenty of players asking the same very reasonable question. I have the disc, why isn't the game running? And the timing makes this even more uncomfortable. Sony recently announced plans to end physical PlayStation game disc production in January 2028. Players have already been pushing back against that decision, flooding social media posts with complaints, and even organizing a week-long PlayStation blackout in August. The fear is pretty simple. As companies remove physical options, players become more dependent on servers, accounts, licenses, and online authentication. And then, when those services go down, there's no backup door. It's like a store closing its physical locations, moving everything online, and then letting the website crash for an entire day. You don't just lose convenience, you lose access. Xbox hasn't announced the same exact physical disc plan, but outages like this show that owning a disc doesn't necessarily protect you anymore. If the console still needs to contact a server before letting you play, then the disc is no longer the game. It's more like a key that still needs permission from someone on the other side of the door. And there's another issue here: compensation. If players paid an extra $20 or $30 for early access and couldn't use it, should Microsoft automatically refund them? Honestly, that seems fair. Publishers have figured out how to monetize time. Pay more and you can play 3 days early. Pay more and skip the waiting period. Pay more more and get in before everybody else. So if they're willing to put a price on your time, shouldn't your time have value when they waste it? If an airline charges you extra for priority boarding and then forgets to open the gate, they don't get to say, well, these things happen. At the very least, there should be some kind of refund, account credit, or extension. Because early access only has value during a very specific window. You can't give those hours back later. This is also why the recent PlayStation outage mattered so much. Yes, some digital games could still be played offline. That wasn't really the point. As Grand Theft Auto 6 gets closer to launch, a different story is starting to make headlines, one that has nothing to do with the game itself. Instead, it's about the people making it. According to several Rockstar developers who spoke with Game Developer, the company's crunch culture is so deeply rooted that they claim it's effectively built into employee contracts. Their newly formed Rockstar Game Workers Union says one of its biggest goals is getting voluntary union recognition. Right behind that, tackling crunch once and for all. If you've been following the gaming industry for a while, you've probably heard the term crunch. It's the period when developers work long hours, nights, and weekends to hit a deadline. Think of it like sprinting the last mile of a marathon, except sometimes that sprint lasts for months. One developer claims Rockstar's employment contracts include a standard opt-out from the UK's working time regulations. Normally, those regulations are designed to protect workers by limiting the average work week to 48 hours. Employees can choose to opt out if they want to, but according to these developers, Rockstar makes that opt-out part of the hiring process. In other words, if signing the paperwork is your ticket through the front door, one of the forms may also be opening the door to extended overtime. The developers say the union has already managed to make one important change. They ran a campaign informing employees that they could opt back into those labor protections at any time. According to one developer, that led Rockstar to simplify the process and remove the reminder for workers to meet with human resources just to restore those protections. That's a small win, but the bigger issue, they argue, still hasn't gone away. Part of the problem is that nobody seems to agree on what actually counts as crunch anymore. One developer claims Rockstar now treats paid overtime differently, suggesting that if employees are compensated for the extra hours, management no longer considers it crunch. But from the worker's perspective, long hours are still long hours. Paying someone to stay late doesn't magically make an exhausting workload disappear. It's a bit like paying for premium fuel in a car with engine problems. The ride might continue, but the underlying issue is still there. And according to the report, the experience isn't even consistent across the company. Some teams reportedly avoid crunch altogether, while others seem to be stuck in it almost constantly. That uneven workload is another reason the union says broader changes are needed. The concerns don't stop with overtime either. Developers also allege that Rockstar has struggled with unequal pay, claiming the studio's reported median gender pay gap has widened after efforts to improve pay balance were canceled. On top of that, some employees say a significant portion of their expected income comes from bonuses that aren't always predictable. Workers claim that as much as 20% of their expected pay can disappear because of inconsistent bonus decisions or evaluations based on what they describe as subjective or even retroactive criticisms. Imagine budgeting your monthly expenses, expecting a certain paycheck, only to find out a sizable chunk is missing because of feedback you didn't even know would affect your bonus. That kind of uncertainty can make it difficult to plan financially, regardless of how much someone earns. It's important to remember that these are allegations made by developers speaking to Game Developer. Rockstar has not publicly confirmed these claims. Still, the timing is hard to ignore. The bigger question now is whether Rockstar's workplace culture is changing alongside the rest of the industry, or whether the pressure to deliver gaming's biggest blockbuster is keeping old habits firmly in place.
I didn't know you could get that big.
Insomniac's Spider-Man games haven't just impressed gamers. Apparently, they've impressed Hollywood too. The director of Spider-Man Brand New Day, Destin Daniel Cretton, has revealed that Insomniac's games actually helped inspire parts of the movie, especially when it came to the action. Cretton said the team looked at previous Spider-Man movies for ideas, but they also studied the games. He admitted he's not really a gamer, although he has played them. But a lot of people on the stunt team are clearly big fans. According to him, members of the stunt team would record clips or take screenshots from their gameplay, bring them into meetings and ask, "Can we actually pull this move off? That's such a cool way to build action scenes." Instead of just sitting around trying to invent random stunts, they were looking at moves that already made players feel like Spider-Man. And if you've played Insomniac's games, you know exactly why. The movement in those games is incredibly smooth. Spider-Man doesn't just punch someone and stop. He flips, swings, dodges, throws enemies into the air, sticks them to walls, and keeps moving like the whole fight is one long dance. Even the web swinging feels natural. You can leap from a building, dive toward the street, fire a web at the last second, and shoot back into the air without losing momentum. It's almost like watching a gymnast who forgot gravity exists. So, when the movie's stunt team looked at those games and thought, we need to try this, it probably wasn't just because the moves looked cool. It's because Insomniac really understood how Spider-Man should move. Of course, copying a video game move into real life isn't easy. In a game, Spider-Man can spin through the air 20 times, smash through a wall, and land perfectly because the animators say so. In a movie, you've got real actors, stunt performers, wires, cameras, safety equipment, and, unfortunately, gravity. So the challenge is taking that same energy and somehow making it work in live action. And Tom Holland is already a fan of the games too. He has called them absolutely sensational. So it's clear the PlayStation version of Spider-Man has made an impression on him as well. There's also a nice little connection happening between the movie and the games. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is getting the brand new day suit as free DLC just before the film releases. So now the movie is taking inspiration from the games, while the game is getting a suit from the movie. It's like both versions of Spider-Man are borrowing clothes and ideas from each other. That's pretty interesting when you think about it. Years ago, Spider-Man games were usually trying to copy the movies. Now one of the biggest Spider-Man movies is looking at the games and saying, yeah, let's take some notes from that. That's a huge compliment to Insomniac and the work they put into making Spider-Man actually feel like Spider-Man. If you enjoyed this video, hey, maybe drop a like. It really helps a lot and tells me you want more. Subscribe for day one gaming leaks and news, and check out these videos you probably missed. Trust me, they're worth it.